testing. I'm back. Let's see if it'll actually play nice or if it's going to continue being awful. It looks like it's back up to normal, so just so anyone knows who is just hopping back in, I originally set up the stream like 10 minutes ago, and I thought it was working fine, but it turns out that it was having insufferable lag. And my best bet is that the lag was caused by the fact that it has to be wireless, because for some reason hooking it up with a wired setup doesn't work, and Camo Studio just does not want to acknowledge it. And obviously that's making life a little difficult, but we're going to go ahead and make it work. We're just going to have to deal with it being a slightly fuzzier resolution because it's at like 720p, but I'm pretty sure you guys aren't going to mind. At least I hope you don't. Eventually this will all get fixed. I will get myself a capture card and a much nicer setup using potentially a DSLR or a mirrorless camera of some kind, and hopefully that will eliminate this as a fundamental issue with my streaming, because it seems like I have finally reached the levels of where my phone is not enough, which would actually open up my phone to allow for face scanning and face tracking, which is kind of nice, but that's a whole nother story. In the meantime, welcome back. I'm back, you're back, we're all back. So I talked about it a minute ago, but I've been working on this guy. He's an Ork Big Boss. He's kind of like their lieutenant model, and so he's pretty good for melee and whatnot, but I just think he's a super cool model. I think he's got like a really incredible face, and it's got so much personality and character to it. So my goal is to continue kind of noodling around with this guy and seeing what I can do this evening, and once I get bored or feel like I've done enough, then I'll go ahead and move on, and I'll work on something else. But for right now, this is kind of what I want to work on, so this is what I'm going to work on. But yeah, I think he's a neat model. And right now, I've been focusing pretty hard on his face and on his skin. So I'm going to see what I can do there without, you know, putting metaphorical feet on a snake. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase. But like, I don't want to do too much and ruin the model just because I've over-noodled with him. And that's always bad, so I'm hoping I don't accidentally do that. So we're going to see how it goes. Right now, I'm just going to go ahead and get some paint ready. What I'm kind of focusing on this evening is highlighting the yellow, because the yellow is pretty neat, and it works as a good highlight color with the green. If you add yellow with green, it'll actually lighten up the color and provide a good highlight that white doesn't do, because white just kind of washes out the green and pretty much any other color. So this wouldn't be a bad way to go about enhancing the highlights on him, because I've been kind of working on that. You can see he's got a little bit of highlighting going here and here, and so my goal is to kind of draw more of that out and see how much of a highlight I can get on him, because he does have quite a bit going on. And I would love to really push some of that detail that otherwise you wouldn't really notice. And I think one of the mistakes I was making is I was going straight into ice yellow, which ice yellow is great as like a highlight color, but ice yellow with this green just kind of grays out the green, and it kind of washes it out and we lose a lot of color. So I think what I need to do is use this Flash Gets Yellow, which is just kind of a very bright highlightery yellow, and mix that in with the green. And what that should do is kind of soften it a little bit into more of like a lime green, which can then be further highlighted into the Dorn / Ice Yellow, which will bring a whole lot more color out. And again, the whole point tonight is to make this guy pop as much as possible for the color. And what I might do, just for kicks and giggles, is I might rebase him and put him on a much nicer, much better textured base. And who knows, maybe I can enter a painting competition with this lad and get myself, you know, a nice entry. Don't know anything about potentially winning it, but it does. Yeah, that yellow is definitely helping a lot. I don't know how much it's showing up on camera, but it's giving it a whole lot more personality than just the straight ice yellow to green mixture was giving. So yeah, I've been doing quite a bit of commission work. And while it's been really good for a lot of reasons, it's also kind of just gotten to the point of like, I need to stop for a minute and just do some stuff for myself, because after a while you get kind of, I don't want to say bored, you get kind of burnt out constantly painting other people's things, and it starts feeling more like an obligation than anything. And so getting a chance to paint the things I want to paint, getting the chance to enjoy the models I want to enjoy, I think I just need a little bit of that tonight before I move on to something else. Hey Snow Twig, good to see you. I hope the camera is synced up this time, because when I first jumped on, it was most definitely not, and it's why I had to stop and restart, because this is technically attempt number 2, Electric Boogaloo, of me streaming tonight. How have you been? It's like, it's been a minute. I meant to stream Look Outside over the weekend, but then I got busy again, so I didn't. And it feels like it's been forever since I've really seen you. And I do know that you tend to go to bed around this time, so I appreciate you hopping on to say hello before you head off to get that much needed sleep. But yeah, right now, I'm just working on this guy, because I just love how ugly he is. I love how incredibly hideous this guy is. He's like a beautifully ugly character. He's just got so much personality. So I'm having a lot of fun trying to figure out how to draw most of that out. And I think I just cracked the code on something that I used to know and then promptly forgot, because it's been a while since I've painted green. But having a good rich yellow brings a whole lot more personality to the highlighting. And so that's kind of what I'm working on now, because originally I did it with like a very pale yellow, and that just made it look washed out because it was close to a white. And now that I'm adding back in this much more vibrant yellow, it's giving his highlights a whole lot more character behind them. And that's what I'm really looking for. And again, I don't even know if it's showing up in camera, but it really is one of those things where it's like, I'm seeing it under this light, and so I feel like it's going to be super obvious once I finish with it, because it's going to look so much better than it did. At least in tiny ways. I also, and I'm really happy about this, I found a local game store that I feel infinitely more comfortable going to, because well, I don't want to say I'm a really social person. I tend to shrink in crowds, especially when I don't know people. But I do like talking to people, and I do love sharing interests and hearing other people share their interests and how much they love things. And I haven't really felt that way at the other game stores that I've gone to, and I think a lot of that is self-inflicted, but that's beside the point. There's a new one that I found that they recently started, and it was because they were a bunch of friends who just wanted to be able to paint and hang out and talk shop and just chill. And so they kind of started as an online club, but interest grew so quickly that they started renting out a space at one of the other local game stores. But they got so big that that local game store was going to start charging them because they were just taking up so much space and time. And they were like, we're going to need to branch out on our own. And one of the key people in this little group was like, hey, my family owns this derelict car dealer in about 15 minutes out. And so they asked their parents about it. And their parents said, well, if you clean it up and get rid of all the garbage, then yeah, you can use it. And it's just like, oh my god, this is the plot to a 1980s movie. All we need is like the evil prospector who sees how many people are gathering there and wants to turn it into a car park or something. But yeah, it's in this like semi-converted car dealership. And it has a real charm about it because they did a really good job cleaning it up and making it look fantastic. And they really stress having like a safe and warm and inclusive and inviting place to play. Like in the tournaments that they want to do, they mentioned that they don't want to just award the winner and that's that. And they want to do like a vote between the players of like who was the most fun to play against tonight. Like who made the game most enjoyable for you. And that person will also get a reward for helping encourage the spirit of what they want to do at the store and how they want the place to feel for players. And I think that's a super cool idea, and it's worked really well previously, so I can't wait to start going there more often. But yeah, it was like, we want to hang out and talk about Warhammer and minis and mini painting, to, hey, we need a place to talk about Warhammer and mini painting, to, oh, I guess we're a store now. And I just think that's super neat, that they went from being like a clubhouse of friends to a store that encourages that kind of vibe. So I look forward to eventually heading back out there and hanging out with them. And just being part of those good vibes. Okay, so this is where I really kind of wish I had done this over the Zenithal highlight as opposed to kind of blocking in like I did a few days ago. Because I can't really see where my highlights were, and that's a big oopsie-poopsie on my part. I will say, though, he is looking pretty good. His skin is becoming very Incredible Hulkish. Okay. You dense motherfucker, I have banned you multiple times, and I hope that you go away. We are going to go ahead and ban, because I have no desire to be part of any kind of AI garbage. They are a suspicious user for ban evasion too, so that's even better. How do I report this idiot? Give me a second. They created the account yesterday, which is absolutely perfect. We're gonna go ahead and how do I? You have to sub, follow, whisper, invite. No, none of that crap. We're just gonna go ahead and ignore them. They can eat it. They can eat it. No, I don't want to unban. I want to get rid of you. Whatever. But yeah, I'm so tired of these AI bots being like, hey, you can get AI chats and AI followers. And it's like, man, if I just wanted to talk to myself and not reach out to anyone else, I'd just stare at a mirror all day or something. Go away. I'm not here to get internet clout because I have followers, fake followers that don't actually watch me paint. Or don't want to hang out. I wish them the worst luck, and whoever created these things, I hope that every single pillow that they ever lay their head down on is extremely warm, and every sock they put, every shoe they put on has a goddamn rock in it. Because that sucks. You are actively making the environment worse. Both the social environment and the actual environment with this AI bullshit. So, yeah. And of course I know there was no one really here to hear that. That's fine. I don't care. It made me feel better. Okay. So, it looks like him jawline needs a little bit of work because I did not do much down here. But I am so happy with how this guy is turning out. I'm using a Monument Pro synthetic brush, which I bought specifically because I was looking for a nicer brush that wouldn't break the bank, and I had heard a lot of good about Monument. So I was kind of curious how their I like their paints a lot, so I was kind of curious how their brushes would hold up. And I'll be honest, I am not the easiest person on his brushes. I tend to beat mine up a lot. But so far, I've actually really liked this. I really like this brush. It's managed to hold the tip pretty well. Despite how I treat it, it's managed to do a pretty darn good job maintaining its tip and not kind of dying, so that's also fantastic. It's just I mean, it doesn't have its pinprick point anymore, but it definitely looks pretty good for how much abuse I've already put it through. Though, for the next thing I'm going to paint, if I get to it this evening, it's going to have to be the Winsor & Newton brush I got. It's way too special a model to not paint with that. Okay, and now we're starting to see this guy come together because he's starting to get his real highlights on his knuckle. So that's phenomenal. This is going to be a really good piece. Now I guess the next thing is going to be for me to really learn how to base, because I feel like that's something I still struggle with and I'm not that good at, is like basing my minis and giving them a compelling story behind their like pose and whatnot. And with this guy, you can kind of see it. He's standing over a Space Wolf, power pack, which was intentional because one of my buddies plays Space Wolves. But like, beyond that, I don't have much more. You got a little not nurgling, a little squig that's starting to grow. But same thing. It's like we're starting to get some story there, but not much. So I'm most likely gonna uplift him out of this this base right here, which might be a little more difficult than I thought, because I think he's got 2 pegs. Yeah, he got 2 pegs, so that's gonna suck. But I don't know. Maybe I'll just try and make something interesting around him, because I definitely wasn't thinking about it when I was having a lot of fun assembling the lad. I think what I might have to do at some point is give this guy a name. Or I might actually go ahead and, like, find a place for him in my army so that I can start giving him a story. Because something I've always wanted to really start doing with Warhammer that I haven't had a chance is, like, have a narrative for my army where my dudes grow and develop and they start gaining, not necessarily battle honors like in a crusade, but, you know, I start having fond memories of how they fought and how they did. Because right now, I don't really have any of that. I've been playing some isolated games and getting them in where I could, but since I'm an anxious person, I don't go out enough to actually really, like, do anything. I get together a continuous narrative for the lads, you know what I mean? So, especially since this Ork army is going to be primarily new for 11th edition, it feels like a good excuse for me to go out and start, you know, playing against other people, get my ass beat, learn how to play, have some fun, roll some dice, make some friends, and build the story of my army. Oh, that arm. I'm liking how that turned out. That turned out pretty darn good, if you ask me. Because I mean, at my base, at my very much my core of my personality, I like stories. I like hearing stories. I like experiencing stories. I like helping build stories. So my hope is that if I do this enough, the narratives that are in my head will eventually come out of my head, and I'll be able to share them. You know what I mean? It's kind of like why people fell in love with more modern D&D, is that more modern D&D has been more heavily narrative based. And so while I do know people that really love the mechanics, I don't think of modern D&D as a super crunchy game. And unless you have power gamers, which is fine, I guess, that if that's how they want to play and they're happy doing it, then good for them. But it's like, you know, people who play D&D, they tell the stories that their characters go through more than anything else. They want their characters to have a heroic journey. And I think that in itself is also really cool. Okay. Same kind of thing happening here. I'm just trying to really highlight a bunch of stuff that otherwise was either poorly highlighted previously or didn't have much highlight, so I can create some more depth on this guy's arms. Because he has some, again, there's a lot to be impressed about with this guy. He's got an amazing face full of character. He's got these very impressive arms for which you can do all sorts of fun stuff with in terms of painting and detail work. And so that's kind of my goal, is to really accentuate his arms and his face, so that when you look at the model, those are the two things you're drawn to. And I'm hoping that if I do it enough, it'll really pull the eye and give the viewer something to really appreciate about, like, the build of this model, you know what I mean? That's the plan, at least. Now, my plan is being somewhat thwarted by the fact that my wet palette is starting to fall apart because I am an extremely neglectful human being with my equipment, and it is unfortunately starting to wither and give way, and the paper that's holding everything together is starting to really go bad. And I don't know if you guys have seen, like, wet palette paper that's gone bad, but it just kind of crumbles, It does the same thing that a wet paper does, in that it like loses its structure and becomes real mealy. And so that's kind of what it's doing right now. Underneath my brush is it's starting to lose its structure, and it's losing its ability to really support paint. And yet I am persisting. So yeah, it's just at this point having a lot of fun hyper detailing one aspect of a model that I really enjoy. And hoping that I'm doing a fun enough or interesting enough job that someone wants to check in. But yeah, this is just a lot of detail work. I will admit I'm not doing anything super sexy or super exciting with the model. I'm just kind of taking the base green color, and I added a little bit of Flash Gets Yellow, which is a very bright, vibrant yellow. And I'm just adding it in to the highlights, the parts where light is most likely going to hit the model. And I'm trying to bring that depth that the actual model itself doesn't have, because it's a tiny little dude and not a full-sized orc in real life. And I'm also adding some Dorn Yellow, which is a very icy yellow. And I'm doing that to try and create some depth through the highlights to make it look like, again, there's even more depth. So there's a lot of that happening right now. Is me just trying to figure out how best to really elevate this model and the very impressive musculature of it, and make it look even cooler. And I think I'm getting there. Okay. Because you can see he's starting to look pretty good, methinks. I think we're getting some real nice highlighting of different aspects of his body, or different aspects of his arms at least, that are really starting to show through because of the work that's being done to highlight the muscles. Yeah, that was the missing piece of this framework, is to get it down there. Okay. And just so people know, if they're interested, I've become a very big fan of Pro Acryl. And I know that there are people that don't like Pro Acryl. I actually was surprised to find that Falon Miniatures didn't like Pro Acryl. Because he's a guy I've kind of looked up to. And I really think that his painting is tremendous and has helped me a lot. I've talked about him quite a bit. But yeah, he kind of turned his nose up at Pro Acryl after using it extensively for a model. And I get it, because I guess for him it was the same problem that I always felt that original Army Painter war paints had, in that it always just felt like someone had taken some melted butter and put it next to some food coloring, and that's how they got the colors for their line, because everything just felt so watery and like you needed a million layers to get anything done, and there was no saturation. And that was what originally drove me away from Army Painter and made me have quite a bit of disdain for him. But from what I understand, that was a pretty popular sentiment, and it caused Army Painter to severely reevaluate how they were doing their paints, which led to the release of the Army Painter Fanatic line, which I'm kind of sad I didn't go ahead and buy like the full set of, because apparently the Fanatic line is phenomenal. And they do a lot of cool things with their packaging that helps make painting easier for newbies and for people who just want to elevate their game. And I think that's super cool that a company would have all of that on there and not let their product like break the bank cost-wise. Because my understanding is that Fanatic war paints are still a relatively inexpensive war paint. They're no more expensive than some of the other reputable brands of paint, you know what I mean? Okay, I'm not sure how much more I want to push the highlights on his... Actually, no, I take that back. I think I know how much more I want to push the highlights on his back. I think what's going to happen now is we're just going to do some very, very light highlighting. And if I end up going too deep, I'm just going to knock it back down. But he has a big back, and it's really showing off here. This boy destroys the buffet tables. And to do so, I feel like I'm going to need to really let it show off around here. And I guess the other thing is that as long as I'm hitting highlights and like high spots on his neck, it'll all kind of make sense. And so I'm hoping that my head wasn't in that shot for too long. I thought I found a perfect space for my camera, but as it turns out, I'm wrong apparently, because my head keeps popping back up into the shot. Okay. Add a little bit more green back into that. And let's knock that back down a little bit, because I feel like that might have gone a little too pale. And I think that might have actually done it. I think I accidentally blended it. So in terms of face, he has a face. He has a much nicer face than he had. And in terms of highlights, we're really getting there. Because I feel like he looks so much better than he did, you know, a few minutes ago. And again, it's all subjective, because I thought he looked pretty good a few minutes ago, but now I'm really beginning to think this might be one of the better faces I've ever painted. I will also admit, I kind of love the horrifying, fleshy colored lips the dude has, because I don't remember / know enough about orc physiology to know whether orcs have enough blood running in their bodies to have more human-like features. But I think that is absolutely disgusting, and I kind of love it. It looks so good. I'm also, like I said, I'm kind of enamored right now with these arms. I think I did a pretty darn good job. So I guess that means now I get to replicate this across like the heckin' war boss and everything. But no, I think it turned out pretty darn good. Get some more highlighting on the back, because it looks like I neglected that a little bit. Because he does have some pretty impressive tricep meat here. Now, for those who don't know, the tricep is definitely the back muscle behind your bicep. The bicep is typically the arm muscle everyone flexes to try and look strong. And while it is an important muscle because it allows for curling and pulling and some forms of lifting, as someone who trained in boxing, I feel like the tricep muscle is even more important, because that's where a lot of your kinetic snap and energy come from when you throw a punch. Those are the muscles that get engaged, along with all the other ones along down the power line. Okay. But yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to get a little bit of subtle shading in on this lad's musculature to show off just how big his freaking... Yeah, look at that. Guy's got an arm. No wonder he's carrying one of the biggest axes in the army. Another piece that I will have to modify greatly, because it is good looking, but I think I could do better. Okay. Now, I guess the next question for me is, how far do I want to push some of these highlights? Because right now, I'm trading in almost pure Dorn yellow. And I feel like I can do it, but at the same time, I'm really scared of ruining this, because I think I've done a good job. So what I think I'm going to do is just hit some of the inner spots where I feel like the light would bounce off the best. And hopefully all that's going to do is add even more depth to the paint I've done already there. So I've mentioned this a lot before, but I will say I do think that the music in the Yakuza series is one of the best things about it. Like, it does a good job with its characterization. It does a good job with its overall plots for the most part. It's kind of in a weird place right now where it's not as good as it used to be, and they seem to be kind of... They're doing some things really cool and some things really lame. And it's made me not want to buy their product anymore, but I will not disparage how good their music is. Okay, let's get a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And I don't even know if you can see the markings I'm making. They're very minor, but they're just kind of showing where the light is really hitting this guy. And hopefully the devil will be in the details, and this will end up looking freaking phenomenal. Like trying to do thin little lines along the vein to show that that's where the vein is peaking. And same with, like, what's really funny is this part of the musculature is something I like to play with on my own arm, because when you grip and tighten your grip, you can kind of see that part of your muscles moving. And if you press down on it with your other thumb, you can close your fist, or at least compel it to really want to close. So when I was bored as a kid, I used to play with that all the time, because I thought it was neat how you could manipulate different parts of your body with different parts of your body. And I'm pretty sure that's honestly what got me into stuff like Aikido, which is all about manipulating different parts of the joints of someone else's body and kind of controlling them. With the one caveat that Aikido is how people who LARP really want to do it, because unfortunately Aikido is not taught exceptionally well in most places, and it's really meant to be more of a meditative exercise thing. Which, you know, I love it to death, and I want to keep doing it at some point. I was really close to getting my Shodan, my black belt, before I stopped. And it would be kind of a nice chapter to close in my life now that I'm a bit older. Though, admittedly, the time for me to do that would have been when I was at, like, my prime with the boxing, because I would have had cardio for days. And I would have been able to really kind of tear my way through those, through the exam, and it would have been cool. But then I remembered I liked food and I hate training and running, so that all kind of went away. But that's okay. Maybe at some point when I get a little bit older, I'll rejoin a dojo and I'll get back to it. Who knows? Someone's life isn't over just because they ended one chapter of it, you know? Not most of the time. Okay. And so what I'm seeing here is, again, a lot of really good lines, a lot of really good places for definition. I will be completely honest, something else I'm really seeing here is just how much a good piece of equipment can improve your painting. Because I'm doing some very, very precise highlights that I could never think of doing with a more worn down brush with an inferior tip. Because, like, I have a another brush that I've been using a lot for detail work, but the tip is basically non-existent, and I can't think of how bad this would be if I was trying to use that brush to hit some of these minute areas. Because that is kind of what's happening, is I'm getting these really, really tiny little spots. And for the most part, this brush is giving me just enough pressure, just enough precise point, hell yeah, to hit those spots and really bring out some of that. Something else I want to do is his eye. His eye is red, but it's like red in a way that you can't really see. And what originally I was going for was there's an artist online who, up until I found out that they posted some other really questionable stuff, I really liked how they portrayed orcs, because the orcs were very simian-like, and they had this kind of playfulness to them, but they also were just incredibly threatening and terrifying. And, like, they joke a lot in 40k, and I joke a lot about how dopey the orcs are, because it's fun to joke about how dopey the orcs are. But if you really think about it, seeing an orc and with how they live and what they appreciate and enjoy would be one of the most terrifying things in the world. And it's like the humor of it suddenly disappears when you realize just how brutal they actually are. Because, like, it's funny when you think of them as a, you know, I'm going to crash my bike into a Warhound Titan or whatever. Because that's silly and it's slapstick and it's funny. But then you get pictures of, like, an orc pinning a human to the ground by their chest and leering over them as they're getting ready to rip them limb from limb. And listen to them scream because it's funny, and it's like, oh, this is far less enjoyable. Or like the shots afterwards of the Gretchen kicking that same soldier's helmet around because that's all that's left of him. And again, it's just like, oh, this is far less enjoyable. This is far less funny. And I think that's kind of cool. And it's something that I kind of want. It's going to be hard to, because they've leaned so much into like the comedy and the proportions of the orcs with this in a way that reads less threatening for the most part and more silly. But it is going to be fun to see how far I can push it by my paint jobs, you know what I mean? Okay, so we're just gonna... First, I think I ought to wait till that dries, because I think there's a little bit too much moisture in his eye for me to hit him with it. So I'm not going to touch that for a second. What I am going to do is I'm going to take some of this yellow, and I'm going to mix it with some of this red, and I'm going to try and get kind of a darker rose, more ruddy red tone. And I'm going to see if I can use that to do some very minute touch-up work around his jaw. Because I want to give the impression, I saw this online today and I thought it was really cool. I want to give the impression that his teeth are pressing against his skin in a way that doesn't necessarily cause bruising, but you can definitely see how it's creating like an angry sore, like angry pressure. And I thought that was really cool. So that's how I'm going to try and delineate these two things, because one of the things I'm noticing as I'm looking at it is that his teeth just kind of blend in and meld into his upper lip, and I want it to look painful. And I think that would help a lot with selling the idea that these orcs, while they can be silly, are inherently uncomfortable to be around, because they create pain and they live in pain. Oh, it's pain. So yeah, I'm just kind of futzing around a little bit to see what I can do with this. And I might be able to do something fun with the lips by bringing them a little bit lighter than where I've got them. Because right now, that's a very light color, or a really dark red color in between the lips, and I don't think that that's going to be good enough for what I'm doing. So we're going to go ahead and hit that with something a little bit lighter. I've accidentally almost made a flesh tone. That's cool. Yeah, it almost looks like they're wearing lipstick, which I think is very funny, but that looks a whole lot better. And I'll probably have to zoom in a little later and really study what I did to the mouth. Okay, his eye looks like it's sunk back in, which is exactly what I want. So what I'm going to try and do is take some of this red. And for those who don't know, I'm pretty much a stan for this color, but Bold Purell Red is such a fantastic color. Because, oh, that's an angry red. Because it's just this really deep saturated red, and I did way too much in there, and now it is all liquid inside his eye. Let's get rid of all that. You have to let that dry again. But yeah, see, that's the weird thing. That's kind of the thing that stinks about doing eyes, is you've got to be really careful with them. Especially when they're real beady like they are on this guy. If you overdo it with the moisture or you hit it wrong, you're going to end up flooding the space. And that's going to look really bad when you try and paint it, because you're going to lose all the detail and all the subtlety that you could have had with that color. That doesn't look much better than it did, but it's a start, I guess. Okay, let's see if I can... It's still really wet, so I'm just pulling out the moisture. So I'm going to leave that eye be. Right now it's very black, which I think looks good, actually. It's kind of lifeless and scary. I'm not going to keep it with that, but that's what it is for now. This guy will get just a little bit... So I mentioned before that I did a bit of a slap chop to this, and I think the slap chop was one of the best things I could have done because it made everything look dirty. The natural texturing of the brush against the plastic gave it this kind of powdered look, and with a lot of things on here, especially with like the decor that he's wearing, you can see that a whole ton of it is just kind of patchy looking metal, and that rough texture I think adds a lot to it, so I think that was a good idea on my part. Okay, I think I'm gonna try and hit that eye again. Take off as much moisture as I can out of that. Let's go ahead and take some of that. Now the Bold Purell Red isn't watery, but it definitely has a lot more fluidity to it. It's really trying. Because all I'm trying to do here is give him like a beady little red eye. I don't want there to be too much of it, because if there's too much of it, it just reads as red, which is fine, I guess. But I like the idea of it being the pupil, and that the black that we put in there, that I put in there, is the sclera, I think is what it's called. And that just gives that dark rim around it, just gives it that extra layer of threat. Now the next problem is I would like to kind of get an orange or a yellow highlight in there, like an eye shine. But because there's so little eye in there, I'm not really sure how I'm going to be able to do this. So I probably ought to go a little more yellow and a little less orange, but we're going to give it a shot. I don't know if that's even doing anything. Oh! No, that could have just been a trick of the light. I don't know, but that's something I'll have to get like a zoom lens for, because my eyes are going to fail me with that. Okay. Well, I'm much more appreciative of his arms now. I think his arms look a whole lot better. So there is that. I was able to accomplish that goal of giving the detail to the arms that I was hoping to see in my mind. Those were kind of there. Except for like this little bit on his wrist. I think I might have just accidentally fixed that. So cool. Good to me. Good on me. Okay. A little bit more, just a little bit more connective tissue in between these, because I feel like it's showing off two obscenely dramatic arrays between some parts of his skin. Like this little area right here can probably afford to be a little brighter, because there's not that much depth difference there. But because of how starkly contrasting the lights are, or the colors are, it's making it seem like there's a huge valley between those parts, and then there's clearly not. Not like there is between some of these crests of muscle. Okay, I think that helped out a little bit. Now, in terms of the rest of him, I'm not really sure what to do for some of these colors. I think what I need to do is up here, I probably need to do some kind of checker. But again, not really sure what kind of checker I want to do. I know the Goths do a lot of checker. I don't think this is supposed to be metal, so it can go ahead and turn back into being like a black rubber hosing. So that's what's going to happen there. This is going to become rubber hosing again. And I guess what I can do just for funsies is I could add some striping to it. We're going to add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of... Whoops, that's yellow, red, and black. That's a terrible combination. I'm actually going to take some of this orange, and we're going to mix it over this lightning bolt in preparation for doing a much brighter yellow. That ended up looking really good. Cool. Okay. A little bit more black on some of these cords, because it makes sense that electric cords would be black since they'd be galvanized rubber. Same thing along here. We got this brother really just screwed two wires into his axe to give it more power. I love it. Something that I read that kind of interested me is I had heard a lot that, like, the idea of the orc's power of imagination has been greatly exaggerated throughout the internet when it comes to the lore of the orcs. And that does make sense to me. And there's a lot of, like, when the orc equipment falls into human hands, Imperium hands, they look at it and like, how the hell does this thing work? It shouldn't work. And so that led me to believe that they were just like slapping hunks of metal together, deciding it was a Shuda or whatever, and now it works. But something that I found out about orcs by watching Adeptus Ridiculous, because I was listening to them a lot while I was painting, is that the way that the orcs work is that they are a society of mycelia, except on a galactic scale. And so when an orc dies, it goes back into the green, like the Y energy, the green or whatever, and they become, it's like their version of the warp. They become very spiritually engaged, and so when like one is needed elsewhere, then it just creates them. And so like the reason why they're able to put together so many crazy ingenious things that shouldn't work is because they are relying on the ancestral memory of countless others that came before them, but they're also too dense to understand that that's the case. So in their minds, they're just making this stuff because it feels right. And I think that's a really neat way of kind of, I don't want to say rationalizing, but explaining why the orcs are the way they are. And so kudos to Games Workshop for coming up with a really neat explanation for why the orcs have like this weird innate ability to create really complicated things despite having the collective IQ of a fence post. I think for his bib, for his little diaper cloth, it's going to have to be like brown followed by a much lighter khaki, because I didn't know what color to make it. These are supposed to be blood axes for one, and I think that might be the call. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put away my nice one and I'm going to grab some brown. Okay. Now this is another color that I've used quite a bit of just because it's a good one. It's called Dark Umber, and it's just a really dark brown. I think it does its job really well of being a really dark brown, and I'm almost out of it with this specific shaker bottle, but I've got another one somewhere because I was smart and I got myself like a backup because I knew this one was going to fail. So we're going to do Dark Umber, and I think we're going to go up to khaki. We're going to do khaki for this next one. And I might work my way up from there. And with the bone bit, I'm not actually sure what I'm going to do with that. I might keep it that color because I really like how gritty it looks. So that might just stay what it is. Okay, so that can go there. And now instead what I'm going to use is actually the big brush. This used to be a number 2, but it's completely worn down to what's essentially a basing brush. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and use it for in this case. Is I'm going to mix in the Dark Umber. And of course I did everything else before touching this, so now anything I touch with it is going to be ruined and I'm going to have to repaint it. If you're a new painter, there's a tip that you're going to hear a lot called work in from inside to outside. This is a prime example of that, because what I'm having to do now that I've painted everything around it is I'm having to work around all of that work, and that is both extremely frustrating because now you've got to slow down and be super careful, and even more frustrating because if you screw up, then especially if you worked really hard on a bit, you've now got to repaint it and try and match what you've already done. Like, I accidentally just now hit the earpiece of the Space Wolf helmet, so I got really lucky just now and was able to wipe it off. But could you imagine if I had let that dry because I hadn't seen it, and I go back to what I think is the finished fit, and I look down and I just see this big brown glob on this back of the Space Wolf helmet? It's like, you can't hide that away with being dirt. That is very clearly a sloppy paint job. It's just like, oh man. Okay. Now that's all I should need that for. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a slightly thinner brush. This used to be a 1, but I've beaten the crap out of it, and now it's one of my brushes. This was my precision brush for a while because it used to hit a really nice fine point. But as I've used it and abused it, that's clearly no longer the case. It doesn't hit like a super fine point anymore. It just kind of does its job, which is being smaller than the blocking brush, but not as precise as the one I was using just a few minutes ago. So that is something to think about when you buy your brushes, is like, nice brushes will eventually become not nice, and you're going to have to find a new use for them. A lot of people tend to turn them into dry brushes, which is real, or texture brushes, because you no longer need to care about holding a point. But taking care of a really good detail brush by only using it for the details and nothing else is highly recommended, just because it means you'll get a lot more life out of a very precise tool. So that is something to think about when you are looking at purchasing your own brushes and you're shopping around, is don't buy a super expensive set because it's super expensive. Buy the ones you need, you know? Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and dump a little bit of water in there. Get these guys. And now that I've watered down the paint a little bit, I kind of might accidentally be giving myself a glaze, but we will see. Because you might be able to tell the color has shifted dramatically now that there's a little bit more moisture and stuff's been able to mingle. But since this is the back part of his diaper, I'm not too worried about it. If need be, I'll wipe it back down with a little bit of a wash. Because all I'm doing is just trying to make that diaper more than just plain black, because it was very boring as such, and it honestly just kind of disappeared into the model, and I want this part to stand out a little bit as well. Okay, and that should be enough for that. Eventually, especially now that I have it out, I can get to highlighting his leather pants and whatnot. Okay, and eventually, once I get past a certain point with this, I'm going to have to stop using this this brush because it's not going to be detailed enough. But when I get to that point, I'll make the change back to the much nicer detailed brush. Which, honestly, I kind of want to buy more of because, again, it's a darn good brush. It didn't cost me a whole lot. And for the specific work that I'm doing, it's pretty darn good at it. So it makes sense for me to have multiple copies of it, you know? Okay. So now, continue hitting all of these spots. This is eventually going to get lighter. I actually want this to go up to almost a bleached white color, because everything else about this guy is so dark. I figure something about him should be a little lighter. On the back end, hopefully this is not too bright. It is not. It is actually a pretty darn good color, very close to what I already have. I might need to go even brighter, honestly. But again, all I'm doing is giving him just a very slight highlight, because first of all, this part is probably one you're going to see a whole lot anyway. If someone is looking up his legs like this through the display, then that's going to be their problem, I suppose. Okay, and one thing I want to do is I want to try and hit more of the trim of the skirt with a lighter color. So I will say that is my least favorite version of Receive You. That's one of Majima's boss themes. I think it's the boss theme for when he fights the main character, the player character, at the end of Yakuza 5. And while in general I like Yakuza 5 because it is a big bloated mess, I feel like, and I do like that fight a lot more than his fight with the same character at the end of Yakuza 4, I do find it to be like the least good version of his Receive You series. Okay. And for those who don't know, that's perfectly fine. I do recommend playing the Yakuza games, the old ones, getting like the Legacy Collection and leaving it at that. Because I feel like they are worth playing. They are pretty heady, complex games for what they are, and they deserve to be loved for their innate charm and silliness and all that fun stuff. Okay, we're starting to get somewhere with cloth. It is starting to get some really nice definition to it, because a minute ago you probably didn't even notice it was there, and now it's a pretty distinct piece of equipment on the guy that I'm hoping doesn't draw too much away from his face. Oh, that's something else I can do while I'm here. I can kind of repaint his teeth. Now for repainting the teeth, that is, I am going to have to go back down to like the small. So that's what's going to happen here, is I'm going to go back down to the small. I did his teeth as a one-note paint job, so I'm going to go back over like the whole thing. And that'll also get rid of some of the red staining that I got when I was trying to make his teeth look a little more threatening just now. Especially these big old tusks. Because that's going to look a little bit better once I get the new paint on top of it. Going to happen now is kind of honestly what happened with his loincloth, but with a little bit more dramatic a change. Okay, here's to hoping I can get this right, fellas. Okay. Even more into the khaki. Now, every time I see orc tusks or horns painted, it always seems like they're actually progressing from a fresher, more ivory color down at the base to a much more vicious, darker, like black near the top, and I think that's to show that they're wearing and becoming more honed and hardened and dried out. That'd be my best guess. So that's kind of what I'm going to go for here without trying to make it look too much like a candy corn. Because that's been my weirdest thing about doing these, is that if you do them wrong, because it ends up being like 3 layers, they just kind of look like a doofy candy corn. But if you do them right, then they look really good and old and threatening. So that's kind of the goal right now, is to leave just enough of the darker brown on here that it does look like a tusk that has blackened with age. And so what I'm probably going to need to do actually is go further down towards the base and really hit that, because otherwise it's just a cell. Speaking of cell, this is completely irrelevant, but whenever I hear the word and I think about it, I've mentioned before that I'm a pro wrestling fan. I kind of have now shied away completely from like WWE and whatnot because of the stance of their political leaders, or like the political stances of their figureheads. But I was listening to a podcast, kind of a VOD, about different examples of nepotism and some of the worst. And I don't remember the name of the territory. It wasn't Eric Watts. It was someone else. But his son, who was a taller gentleman at like 6'3" or whatever, 6'4", he really wanted him to succeed as a wrestler, so he kept pushing him to either to or near the top of the card. And not only is that kind of insulting to the other guys that really busted their butts to get there, but he also wasn't very good. And so finally, his dad managed to book him a match with, at the time, the great Harley Race, who was known as a legitimate tough guy, and also the champion of a specific, Hey, the Mighty Yellow Sun, good to see you again. I don't know how much of everyone there is. It's pretty quiet because, you know, my streaming schedule has been so wildly inconsistent, but that's okay. I'm just trying to get back into it and have fun and do all that fun stuff of getting back into streaming, because I did really miss it. I am getting really frustrated with my my Camo Studio, though, because it's definitely consistently being awful and just not acknowledging my camera phone, which is one of the reasons why I've had to keep skipping. But yeah, so now it's here. I'm working on this Ork Big Boss, and I think for the most part I've done a pretty good job. I'm pretty happy with how he's turning out. I'm going to switch over to another model eventually, but right now I'm kind of trying to stay away from my commission work just for a bit, so I can enjoy painting something I want to paint versus something I have to paint. Because don't get me wrong, I'm having a lot of fun with some of the commissions I'm doing, but because, you know, money, it's really put the pressure on me to get some of the commissions done, so I haven't felt as good about them, even though they've turned out pretty nice. And it's just like, I need to paint something for me for a while. And so that's what I'm doing. I wish I could keep my hands that steady when I paint. Again, the thing that's keeping it steady is that I've got my fingers pressed against the piece, because if I didn't, like, you can see them shaking visibly. It really is just a matter of learning these strategies, because all that's really moving now is my wrist, my fingers flicking it ever so lightly. And I think you've mentioned before that you've got some kind of tremors, which is not helping. But it does help a little bit. Like, I could not do this if I could not paint to this level of detail and precision if I were just freehanding it like this. Like, I can't even line up my shot right now. But if I have it pressed against here and all my fingers are, now suddenly I can kind of hit it. I gotta hit his butt. I gotta hit his butt. So I'm gonna hit his butt. So yeah, I just kind of arbitrarily decided while I was painting this evening, this guy was going to become my high effort paint job. And even though there's some really, really cool models in the box, he's going to be the one that I'm going to pour a lot of effort into just because I really dig this sculpt. Oh, no problem. I was a school teacher, so I'm used to having to share often. And to be completely honest, I'd rather reshare than not, because, you know, just because someone heard it once doesn't mean they're going to remember it for forever. Especially when, you know, the guy who's streaming takes 2-week hiatuses every 2 weeks or whatever. But yeah, that's definitely a good way to steady your hands and get detail shots. Something else I'm doing is I'm using a brush with a really good fine tip, and that's helping tremendously as well. Oh wait, no, this was supposed to be a dark black leather. What the fuck am I doing? Pardon my French. I was gonna make this a black leather, like a whole lot of the other leather the lad is wearing, so that it really doesn't blend in with the rest of their equipment, because most of the rest of their clothes is kind of a khaki. So I figure if I do a little bit of a black and then mix in some of this khaki with the gray to make a gray, that should help me kind of play with this a little bit more. Something else that you always got to be cognizant of that I'm trying to get better at, and that has really improved my painting when I do, is the angle of the brush. Because if you're not putting it at the right angle, then the wrong parts of the brush are going to hit the mini and they're going to get their paint all over it, and that's not good. So if I do it from this angle and I try and hit this, it's going to go all over the bone. But if I angle it so just the tip gets in there, I can hit the pieces of the cord that's holding it together that I'm looking for. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't look much better, I'm not going to lie to myself, but I think if I get this down to a deep enough black, then it'll contrast well enough with kind of his extremely dirty, ratty shirt. And then maybe I can build it back up with a little bit of gray to show the leather. And I probably ought to do these as like black cords as well, because otherwise they're going to blend right into the bone. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that as a black. Yeah, that's going to look better, I think. Now I guess the next part for me will be trying to like really accentuate this black and make the stuff stand out, so it's not just like a solid black on a solid black strap. Because see, I'm no longer thinking of this as just model I like. It's now becoming model that, given the right opportunity, I want to enter in a competition. So my goal is very rapidly becoming, how can I make every part of this guy look phenomenal? Because I'll be honest, I am pretty darn proud of how I think it's funny, his face has become so kind of swollen and red and pink that he almost just looks like he ate something and it's stuck all over his mouth. I might have to tone that back down a little bit. Which is fine, because that's the whole point of doing this, is getting to see what looks good and what doesn't. Now here's a weird pose that I'm trying to do. And again, what's allowing me to be so steady is my hands doing this. Yeah, he had a ghost pepper chip. That's exactly it. He did the one chip challenge, but he was given a whole bag of them, like a whole Doritos bag of them as a prank, and he didn't know any better. I wonder how an orc would respond to that, actually. Would an orc feel that kind of pain? Like, the pain of capsaicin burning their tongue? If we were to give an orc, like, the 40k equivalent of the one-chip challenge, how would an orc respond to that? This is now a question that's going to haunt my dreams. And I wonder if the other orcs would enjoy watching him in agony as he just screams and yells because he ate a chip, or would they just be like, that's stupid, that chip can't be that bad, and then they're going to try and eat a chip. And it's going to become like it is for adult males and teenage males, where they're just like, look how tough I am. I just destroyed my taste buds and my digestive tract to prove that it doesn't hurt me. Because those challenges are pretty darn fun, I will admit. I tried to eat spicy Doritos at one of my jobs once, and it was a bad idea. I can't do spicy foods anymore. I'm getting too old for that shit. Okay, so yes, I was right. Coloring the chords a different color definitely helps with the readability of the chords. And that is a good thing. Unfortunately, because Pro Acryl is so, like, translucent a color, it's really starting to show. So what I'm going to do is switch away from that one. I'm going to go back to my... I'm going to go back to my basing brush. And I'm going to see what I can do about these guys, because this got a very sloppy coat of speed paint. So I'm going to see if I can make the coverage a little more comprehensive. And so that's just going to be black, which will dull it down, and that's fine. Here's what I can... I don't know how much food pallets for him are 40k. I know that tau tastes bitter to humans and orcs eat squigs, but I don't know what those taste like. Yeah, I hope they don't ever go into that, because that gets into like a weird space. Okay, so now we can go ahead and pepper this with a little bit of a dark brown. Differentiate the color because I decided to make the straps holding this stuff up. Apparently made them black, which is fine. Okay. Now, I think what needs to happen is I need to let this stuff dry. But yeah, he's really starting to come together. I'm really starting to like this model on that specific level of, like, he looks really good. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's turning out to be a really neat looking model. Now, I'm about to do something that I'm kind of scared to do. I want to give one of his bare shoulder pad checkers. And checkers are difficult. If you've never given a model checkers, it's really hard. It's not an easy thing to do. And it's not something I'm good at. So I guess I'm going to try my best. And the way you kind of have to do it, or the way that is suggested you do it, is you kind of create a grid. And you fill in that grid. And the thinner the brush you have to start with for this, the better. Because the thicker the grid you have, the thicker that specific color's squares are going to be. So if I paint the grid using white, and I have a thick brush, then it's just going to create really big white squares. And that's not what we want. Imagine Tao chugging the darkest Turkish coffee with no sugar or cream. I don't know enough about the Tao to know how they'd feel about that. Like, I don't know what their general food is like. I know that they have human auxiliaries called guevesa, and that's about it. Okay, so I'm using some airbrush thinner here to hopefully make a smooth white as I go across. That'll do. That'll do, pig. So yeah, this is where life gets scary, because you have to have a steady hand, and as I talk about it, I'm getting nervous. Okay, so that's turning out pretty okay. And thankfully, what's also helping is that this brush is keeping a really, really good tip, which is allowing me to draw these very thin lines, except for where it's not, and that's fine. So there you go. I got some nice lines there, and between the airbrush thinner, which has not caused it to like water and bead, and having a steady hand and an extreme amount of luck, I'm off to the races here. So we're gonna see how this plays out. Hopefully I don't accidentally fudge everything up. Oh, that's gonna fudge everything up, because I have no idea how these are supposed to be. If you'll excuse me, I'll be quietly panicking. You know, that's pretty darn close. I noticed that sometimes you put the pan on your hand before you start painting. Why is that? Oh, okay. So, it does a couple of things. It gets excess paint and moisture off of the brush. But the big thing, and I didn't even know about this for a while, but it also shows you how thick or thin your paint is. Because if you don't thin your paint enough, it's going to come across real thick, and you're going to lose all the detail. Like, you can't see the detail in my skin anymore, right? But if I thin down the paint a little bit, which you don't need to see me thin it down, but if I thin it down a little bit and I do the same thing, and that might actually be too thin, you can actually see the details of my skin under there. And what that does is it tells you how thin or thick your paint needs to be. And if you do it too thin, let me get some and let me really water it down. Like, if you go too thin with it, now you've lost all detail, and now it just looks really runny. So it kind of helps you figure out how thin or thick your paint is. And I've got so much paint on my hand. And it also kind of dries out your paintbrush a little bit, so you don't accidentally deposit a huge droplet of wet paint glob on your miniature. The thing about looking at your skin tone through it, I learned from watching Oh my god, I think it was Jose da Vinci. It was one of those incredible Spanish painters, and he was talking about how he was able to get certain stuff on his mini. I'm so sorry that I petered out while talking about that, but unfortunately I started doing this, and this requires me to be very concentrated because I'm not very good at checkering, and so I'm trying to do my best, and but he basically explained that exact same thing, but in Spanish. And I was like, oh my god, that makes so much sense. And so I've kind of been doing it ever since, while specifically looking for that report on my hand. So I can go, oh wow, that's way too thin, or oh wow, that's way too thick. And I don't know if it's made me a better painter, but it's made me more cognizant of of how thin or thick my paint is going onto the model. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of little tips and tricks. You don't need to be, you don't actually need to be it on bare skin either. If you are working on a model that's going to be very sensitive, like a resin model, or you know that you're going to be touching the model itself a lot instead of having it on a painting handle, you could do it just as well on a gloved hand. Okay, now something I need to kind of remember is that this is supposed to be drawn by Orks, and I don't trust Orks to be able to draw in a straight line, so I don't know why I'm panicking so much about my ability to draw these checkers in a straight line. And I know, if I recall right, it's not even the Blood Axes that normally do this, it's the Goths. They're the ones who typically go ahead and do these checkerboard patterns, and I don't remember why, but I don't care, because this is my army, and I think it looks cool. So, this guy is going to get checkers. It is not Friday night. What, Orks being able to paint perfectly straight lines? I'm sorry, I started rambling and I didn't look over. So I've already forgotten half of what I said. Okay. He's the boss because he was the only one able to make a perfect checkered pattern. All the other Orks' checkered patterns are sloppy and terrible. Yeah, like one just draws a bunch of polka dots, and the other one draws an X, and the other one just doesn't know what he's doing, so he draws a smiley face. Yeah, no, oh god, I forgot to do the back! Yakuza did a really good job with their music, and Yakuza 0 especially did a really good job with their music. And every single one of the dance number songs are absolute bops. And I think we talked about this last time, because I just love talking about Yakuza, but they're all style parodies or style references to real songs. And I think that's super cool. I have forgotten the name of this gentleman once again, but this seems to be a combination of two of his dance hits from the 80s. And after listening to the remix someone made of his two most famous ones, it's like, oh, I see where they got this beat from. And I think it's really good. I think the songs themselves are really good too. And you can see with this one, I was not able to get as thin a line going down, so the squares are going to be a lot more wonky. Which is okay. Someone made a mod that put the Master Chief into the dance scene. It was glorious. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, and it's neat that they've done stuff like that. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting the name of it? There's a fighty game that's rhythm-based, and they've put different characters in there, because you can do custom songs. So they'll, like, do a Yakuza song, and they'll put Majima or Kiryu in it. and I think it's really Beat Dancer or something. And I thought it was really cool. Okay, something else I need to do is probably that to really... Ah, man, I hecked that up. I gotta go ahead and cut open... Or, like, really... Yeah, of course someone did a Michael Jackson mod. I mean, who wouldn't? Dude was already a kick-ass dancer, so it doesn't surprise me at all that they went ahead and put him in there. Gosh. What I did think was kind of funny was I recently found out that, like, all of Michael Jackson's most famous dance moves were referenced or lifted by from someone else. And it's just that Michael Jackson is so effortlessly cool in the way that he presented himself that he just elevated them. Because, like, a lot of his more esoteric flailing and the way he would, like, stand was taken from a character in a French film for The Little Prince. And the way that that guy had very eccentric movements. And it's like there's that all over the time. Yeah, the moonwalk is the backslide, which I believe Chubby Checker made famous long before Michael Jackson was alive. Like, again, I don't want to say Michael Jackson was a thief. He was not a thief. He just knew good dance moves, right? But yeah, it was really weird watching it because it was like, oh my god, those are Michael Jackson moves, but from before Michael Jackson did Michael Jackson moves. Let me see if I can find it while we're talking about it. YouTube. Little Prince Michael Jackson. Bob Fosse. That's his name. We don't need audio. Give me a second. I do remember hearing about the original. Yeah, it was called The Backslide, which I think is a super cool name. Quome? Alcoholic. Oh, okay, fine. Sherlock, whatever. So it's this scene in particular. I don't know anything about the context. I just know this character's name is Bob Fosse. The actor's name is Bob Fosse. And the way that he moves is supposed to very much emulate how Michael Jackson... Yeah, there he is. And let's see if I can... And you can see he's even got like the same kind of shoes and... Let's see him go. I've only ever seen clips of this scene. I've never actually seen the whole thing. Let's... Yep, there he goes. And there's a lot more to it than just that. There are shots of him like doing stuff and whatnot. So he's walking around. Actually, let's go back and let's see what he does here. Yeah, he's definitely got an interesting gait to him, doesn't he? And let's see, where's more of it? That's a very famous Michael Jackson pose. Good gravy. Oh, look, there's another one. Yeah, you can really see it. It's kind of neat because, like, Michael Jackson very definitely elevated it, but it is kind of neat seeing him where the genesis of it came from. And there it is again. Yep, that is very clearly Michael. Is it Chubby Checker? No, it wasn't Chubby Checker. Backslide Origins. Original. Okay, so Origin of the Backslide. There it is. First moonwalk ever at the Apollo Theater. And I don't even know if this is on screen. It is kind of on screen, so we're going to put it back on screen. Yeah, it was part of a tap dance number, which I think is absolutely incredible. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, is a very famous way of putting it, but that is never meant to discredit other people who do cool things. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about it, is you can say that, oh yeah, they got the idea from XYZ, but it's not like I'm trying to discredit them or take away from them. They still did amazing things with how they did it. It's something that I actually really liked about Nirvana that I didn't know about Nirvana, is that they were very open about their influences, and they were very open about the people that inspired them. And Kurt Cobain in particular was very much like, you should listen to these people, you should listen to this band because you like this sound that we do, we got the idea from this band, listen to them. And I just think that that's neat that they were influenced by French mime as well. Yes, that's another example. So there's just like that all over the place, and it's just cool seeing how other people interpret it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think Michael Jackson ever claimed to be the originator of the moves that he did. He never claimed to have invented the moonwalk, so it's not like he was trying to steal credit. He just took things that he liked, that he thought were cool, and presented them to a larger audience. I mean, there are a lot of other things. If people want to argue about Michael Jackson, some of his more problematic bits, his extremely problematic bits, I completely understand. But as a musician, as an artist, he was pretty open about his influences, and I think that's okay. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because there's a very famous French mime. He's like the French mime. When people think about French mimes, they're thinking about him. Okay, so I'm actually going to, like, really knock this down with some washes, because having it be that clean feels wrong on an orc that's supposed to be dirty. It's kind of the same with the metal on his legs. All this metal plating, is it looks really shiny, and that's great, but it's also going to get knocked down. Let's actually have a little bit of that. We might not need to. Nah, it doesn't actually look like we need to. Because, yeah, he's wearing, like, he's wearing boots under it. And I think that's going to be okay. Yeah, this guy, good lord, he turned out nasty looking. I'm pretty okay with how he's turning out. Again, I kind of want to do more with his, pants. I want to give him a little bit more of an elevation there. But I'm not really sure how to go about it. I guess I'll figure it out later. And hopefully that will turn out okay. What exactly is a wash? It's a different type of paint, and it's generally really thin. And the idea of it is that it goes in the shadows. It goes in the shadows of the model to really emphasize depth. So, like, here, let me find one, because I'm gonna go over the guy anyway. I guess it'll be this guy. No, you know what? I can do it over an orc. I can show you a couple cool things. Do you know anything about speed paints? You know about them speed paints? Okay, so here's an orc boy. Well, you don't see him yet, but give me a second. I would a little. Okay, so there's a ton of different paint types. The base one is like acrylic paint. It's just a base layer, which is your basic level of paint, and it covers the model, and it gives it a nice solid cover. They have what are called layer paints, which are made thinner so that when they go on, they don't. You're supposed to thin your paint, get much paint. Yep, those are both important parts. But like, here, let me. Actually, here's a pretty good example. No, I don't want that one. Actually, here's a great example because I have all these colors. So, with Games Workshop has really been the one to classify these. If you look at this one, it says Base Everland Sunset. That's because it's meant to be a base coat, or a base paint, which means when I put it on the model, it's supposed to try and cover... It has a denser pigmentation, so it's supposed to try and cover part of the model better. So if if I paint this part of his shoulder pad with the yellow, it's supposed to go on relatively thick. Now, of course, I've chosen the absolute worst color to do this because yellow is notoriously hard to do in one coat, but it generally goes on thicker, and it gets halfway decent coverage. Yellow does not, so just keep that in mind. Yellow and white tend to not get very good coverage. So if I do this like 1 or 2 times, and if I let it sit, eventually this layer will dry, and then I can do another one, and then that other one will probably get me pretty decent coverage since I'm working on, for the most part, a white... Hold on, please. Oh, boy. Okay, so I dried that off, and if I do another layer, what will most likely happen is it'll cover the previous one a whole lot better. And now, I mean, it's not perfect coverage because I'm going quickly. You can see how, like, the yellow is covering that part of it. One moment. Yeah, and it's getting, for the most part, pretty okay coverage, right? And what happens is they have another type of paint, and it's called a layer paint. And the layer paint doesn't have, like, Flash Gets Yellow is a layer. And layer paints don't have as much pigmentation, they have a little bit more medium, and that's because they're not meant to go on as thick. So if I just take pure Flash Gets Yellow, and to give you an example, I'll paint it right here. You can see how much thinner it is almost immediately, right? And that's because it's not meant to go on something that hasn't already been painted, and it's not meant to go on big flat surfaces. With Flash Gets Yellow, you'd want to use it as like a highlight. So I might go along the edges and paint along those, and what that'll do is it'll kind of fade into the corners, into the edges a little bit, and it'll look more like a transitional color to the Averland Sunset I already have. And even if I do it across here, it's going to fade into it. It's not going to be as vibrant and as bright and as noticeable. Now let me see if I actually did that right real quick. And yeah, like even just hitting it with the hairdryer a little bit, I don't know how well you can see that, but like the borders where I hit it are much less clear because it's more medium, it's less pigment. And so that's what it's used for, is to make highlights on your models. And the opposite of the highlights, of course, is the shadows. And what the shadows do, the shades do, is they're a very thin paint. Like this is a shade. This is Agrax Earth Shade. And what you can do with a shade is you can slop it on there. And first of all, it's going to change the model to be kind of tinted that color, just because of the nature of the paint. But like if you look at it, it's really watery. Right? It's really watery, and that's the point. It's only supposed to really show its color in recesses. So like if I paint his pants, what it's going to do is it's going to try and run into the recesses while leaving transparency over the high spots. And generally you don't want to use a shade as like your main coat, because you can see it's starting to thin really badly, and so it's only supposed to go into the crevices. And the idea is that it leaves most of your regular coat on the Mini while shading it. So if you give me a second, I can actually show you this, because this is a boy. I've got 30 of these, so I'm not too worried about ruining them. Let me dry off his pants real quick. So I'm gonna just as a quick example, I'm gonna go ahead and paint this boy's skin, like his body. I'm gonna paint it green with just a base coat, and then I'm going to hit it with a shade. So I'm going to use the same green I've been using. I'm going to slop it on pretty thick because I just want to show you this, but like, and here, this is kind of the problem I'm going to have with Pro Acryl, is their paints are naturally thin. They're actually closer to a layer paint than they are a base paint. But I'm going to go ahead and slop on this pretty quickly, and then I'm going to do a second layer after hitting it with the hairdryer to let it dry. No problem. One of the big... I mean, I was a teacher, and a big reason why I started this channel, other than to hang out, was to teach people. So, yeah, we're just going to take all that, and we're going to hit all that, and do all this. Now, I would also recommend not blow-drying a wash, because you're just going to push it around, and it doesn't need to do that. It needs to settle. But, like... You can kind of see his details flattening out because we're losing that sense of shadow that I artificially created by dry brushing him. But you can see like the musculature is starting to get lost because it's really just becoming one solid color all the way through. There's no depth to it. There's no highlight to it, right? And I don't know how clear this is showing through on the camera because I know I'm painting from fairly far away. If you want to, you can just let me know whether you're seeing what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to get at is like his bicep muscles, his chest muscles, they're all kind of disappearing because they're all becoming this one monotone color. And like you can still see them, but they're not as visible. If I were to take this guy. If I were to take this guy, actually I didn't dry brush him very well. You can see better his biceps and whatnot. Yeah, he does look like one green blob. Okay, so it is coming through at least somewhat. So what the shadow does, what the shading does, give me a second to what it should do, at least, if I do this right, is it should kind of sink into the crevices, and it's not going to suddenly make it look a million times. Actually, let's get his face too, because his face is where it's really going to show up. It's not going to magically make your paint job look a million times better, but it's going to provide darker colors in the recesses, which will, in their own way, make your paint job look better. So yeah, let's just go ahead and really glom this on. Okay, and yeah, that's looking pretty good. And same thing with his face. You might be noticing that his face is kind of disappearing into the green. And the thing that's saving it right now is because I did that Xenophil prime and that dry brush, is that we're still getting some slightly different shades of dark and light. If I had primed him all white, like some people do, which is perfectly valid, he would be a whole lot harder to discern. Okay, so there he is, right? So now if I take Agrax Earthshade, which is kind of a brown wash, it's got brown pigmentation in it. If I take that and I start glomming it in here, you're going to start seeing, of course after I use too much, you're going to start seeing some of those details come back, because the shadow, or the dark color in the shadows, is going to create contrast for your eyes to really focus in on. It's also going to make them look real dirty. That's kind of the other problem, and why you only want to use certain colored washes on certain dudes. But like, you can see all the musculature in his biceps starting to show up again. Same over here. And so, and like the crevices in his muscles, you're going to start seeing the stitching on his back. And again, I'm doing this very quickly just so I can give you a really quick rough and dirty demonstration. But now that we have all of these dark shadows on him, the details on him are starting to show up again. And typically you want to do this in places where there are a lot of texture. Fur is a really prominent one that people like to do, because like his hand would be a great one. If I had a different color on there, going over his hand would really kind of show off the shadows of the wrinkles and the crevices in between his fingers versus the highlight. Same with like his knuckles. And the only reason why you're seeing them right now is because I already kind of did that job with a dry brush of a white over a black. But like, you can really see his cheeks now, you can see his individual teeth, you can see like the definition in his biceps and his shoulder because there's more separation. So that's kind of what it's for. Some people use it for different things, but that's generally what a wash is. And to give you contrast, ironically using that term, they have what are called contrasts or speed paints, which are kind of like a medium between washes and regular paints, because what they do is they seek the crevices, they seek the recesses of the model, and the pigmentation tends to be denser there than it is near the surface. So like, if I want to do this guy's boots, for example, in this wildwood, actually, yeah, if I were to do that, you'll see it comes through with a much richer, much more opaque color, but you're also potentially seeing little bits of the highlight peek through, because those are the high spots on the model's feet. So same with this boot. If I were to do this, again, it's going to be brown at the end. It's not going to completely wash out like the... you can kind of see the wash already drying and not being as brown as you thought it would be. But with these boots and with this contrast paint, I've now got highlights. I've now got, you know, recesses. It kind of does all of the stages all at once. And so that's why people like using speed paints and contrast paints if they're if they don't want to spend a whole lot of time working on like their line infantry. And you can see it there too. You can see where the buckle is a highlight. You can see where the edges of the wristband are a highlight. And that's kind of the point, is it makes it so much quicker to paint, with the caveat of you can't be as sloppy with it, because they'll start blending together and you can't kind of paint over them because they'll just keep blending together. And so like, you can see how much quicker I'm getting a whole lot. I mean, look at how good that satchel looks after that one layer, because of that dry brushing I did underneath it. And it just gives a whole lot of detail really quickly if you do the prep work. So yeah, that's and I mean, look at that. I mean, I don't know how long that just took me, but compared to how long it took me to draw the checker on the shoulder pad of the Big Boss, and this guy's like 90% done. if I want, I mean, I could do some metallic paints for his weapons, and I can do like a black leather for his strap, and he's ready to go. I can play him, right? So it's really good if you want to do that quickly, and you just want your models to look okay. And I don't mean that disparagingly. Okay is more than enough, but you kind of give up some control when you do that. So it's always like, how much time do you care or want to put into painting these guys? Do you want to put in, 5 to 10 hours like with this guy? Or do you want to put in, give me a second, please. Like 30 to 45 minutes like this guy. This guy is almost entirely contrast paints. But because I did that like slap chop thing where I dry brushed white over him, it's kind of hard to tell. He looks fantastic, right? Like, he's not going to win me any painting competitions, but he definitely looks more than ready. I did some touch-ups with some regular paints on, like, the eyes, but you don't even need to do that. You'll have a fully painted, ready-to-go model that'll look great on the battlefield. So yeah, that's what that is. It's just a way to help... Actually, you know what? It's just a way to help you speed up your paint jobs. If you care more about playing than painting. Like this lady, she's cool. Let me check real quick. What color is her hair supposed to be? Because I can actually show you another example of speed paints with this. Because this one's like ready for it. Nope, already did that one. Did I not get the pictures for these? I didn't get the pictures for these. Never mind. Give me a second. Let me look something up. Parabellum? No, not Old Dominion. I want the other one. I need to start working on this lady anyway. Oh, there she is. Okay, so her hair is blonde. So she's got like a strawberry blonde. So, like with her, if I wanted to speed paint her, which I'm going to do because this gentleman is paying me decently, but he doesn't want me to do a hardcore, super amazing paint job on them. He wants them to be serviceable. He cares more about like speed and tidiness than he does about making them award-winning. So like, I'm going to take this other contrast paint. It's called Ian in yellow. And the reason why I'm choosing it is because it's got some really nice orange undertones to it, right? And that means on the surface parts, it's going to be quite yellow. And in the recesses, it's going to be orange. And that's actually what her hair looks like based on the picture. So I'm going to grab some of that. I'm just going to run it down here. And now she's blonde. So it's just doing that kind of stuff. It's helping you find shortcuts to get to playing the game faster. And yeah, I kind of forget that with this client is that he's not looking for me to paint it to look like a world beater competition model. He just wants to have these models ready to play. And so I've got to remind myself of that sometimes. That I don't need to be putting the massive amount of effort that I'm putting into some of his stuff because he's not paying me to do so, nor does he want me to do so. But yeah, like, I'm just going to go ahead and hit the rest of her. Now, you've kind of seen how I highlight, how I do my coats and everything. Can you imagine how long it would have taken me to do this hair had I used traditional paints and traditional methods? Versus, like, how little time that took for me to get her hair up to, like, good. And so that's the beauty of speed paints and contrast paints. Army Painter does their own set called Speed Paints. They're really good. Games Workshop's contrast paints are really good. I believe Pro Acryl they're calling them One Step, and they're brand new. But yeah, that's just a lot of how that stuff works. So, I don't know if you need to like clip this or bookmark it on this point once I get it onto YouTube as a way to help you. That's cool. I'm not the only one who talks about this stuff. There are other YouTubers who do a really great job of explaining it. But that's base coats versus layers versus shades versus contrast. In terms of getting as much paint as possible off of your mini, that's primarily for dry brushing. Or off your brush, because if you have too much paint on your dry brush, you're just going to glob it all over. And with dry brushing, you don't want to do that. You kind of just want to hit the raised edges, because that's what creates that. So like, this guy, for example, he was primed black, and then I dry brushed him with a white, which means I took this fat, ugly, beaten up makeup brush, and I swirled it around in a white paint, and then like swished it a lot. I kind of did this, but against like a texture, like a paper towel, until almost nothing was on there, and then I just did this over and over again. And what that does is it only hits the high spots. I'm not like pushing into it really hard. I'm just kind of going like with the brush, and that way it doesn't bury itself into the crevices. It only kind of hits the raised parts of the model, and that's what creates this nice heavy shading. And actually, I got an example of what like regular gray plastic looks like this, and it looks great, but you can see how some of the details kind of get lost because of how flat everything is. So by making the low parts really dark and the high parts really bright, you eliminate that. You create this really distinct detail because it's simulating depth that isn't really there. Look at this shit. Actually, give me a second. I think, yeah, I do. And again, this is the exact, cool enough, this is pretty much the exact same model, but painted with contrast paints. Like I said, I think the only things that aren't contrast paint on him are his tongue and his eyes. Everything else is just me using like one layer of contrast paints. Which I think is kind of cool, because you really get to see how much detail they bring to the model. It's not the same model. This one's charging, this one's not. But they got the same face, they got the same arms, just different torsos. So yeah, it does a good job of making your models look really vibrant and neat to do it right. That being said, I think I need to move on from Orks for now, because I did mention that I was going to paint some oh my gosh, I forgot the Fallen Divinity, because I got this. I don't know if you saw this. I'm pretty psyched about it. The gentleman who I was talking about, who had that lady model that I showed you, he has been playing the armies that I've painted at the game store that I'm starting to go to, and one of the guys was just in like absolute stunned awe and was like, can he paint something of mine? And because he has this really cool centerpiece model called the Fallen Divinity. He's playing this faction that's like undead and like old kingdoms, so he wants that model to look good because it's the centerpiece. And I had forgotten that when I was quoting this stuff to the first gentleman, I was basing it off of the non-artisan pieces. So like a giant as a non-artisan piece, I think it's like $65. And so it was like, okay, if you want me to do display, it would be 2 times the cost of the box. So, not to talk too much shop. And when I said that, I had forgotten that as an artisan piece, it was like a $150 model. So the dude's paying me quite a bit of money to assemble and to paint it. And I want to do a really, really good job with this. I want this to be the best model I've ever painted. But it's called the Fallen Divinity because it's like a fallen angel type thing. And it's really freaking cool. Give me a second, because I don't want to break this thing. It's very fragile. It's made out of model's resin, which is extremely brittle. So I've done a little bit of work on this model, not a whole lot. But like, this is the model. And like, you can see just how freaking neat this model is. And so I want to make sure to do a really good job on it. And that's the plan. And right now, it came with like 2 devil dogs that are like stalking around it. And so what I want to kind of finish the evening on is getting a reference picture of these lads, these good boys, and painting them up to try and make them look good before I start working on the Fallen Divinity, so that I can say that part is done. Now, I'm really scared of moving this, so if you just give me a moment, I'll be right back. I don't like where I'm storing this, to be completely honest. It's on a box, on a shelf. So I'm going to move some things around to try and put this on a more secure base, because this was an expensive model. That's good there, cool. And I'm going to go back and I have reference shots of this thing. I'm actually going to go ahead and open one of those up. Because I am looking right now. Get pictures of the doggos. Yeah, they're kind of a dark blue window capture. There we go. And we're going to do a couple things. First of all, that's way too big. I don't need it to be that big. We're going to shrink it down. Shrink it down right here, I suppose. And that doesn't really jive for me, so I'm going to have to put that there. I'm trying to find a way to be able to look at this model while also continue talking. Okay, there we go. So that model, it looks to be... It looks like I'm going to want this dark blue. What time is it? It's 90... Oh, crap. I don't have time to do this. Well, that sucks. I don't really have time to do this. I need to kind of get off a little earlier. So I think, unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to paint the doggos, and they're going to have to wait until, like, tomorrow or something. Well, that stinks. That being said, yeah, I guess that's going to be it then. I'm glad that I was able to provide a pretty useful lesson because some of the beginner level stuff, while it used to be talked about a lot, now it's kind of assumed. 5 a.m. to work, good gravy. I do the same thing, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call it here, but I'm also going to go ahead and raid into someone because I enjoy doing that. It looks like Lotus K is still going. So I think I'm going to raid into Lotus K, and we're going to do that. So we're going to go ahead and /raid. Nope, that's not how you spell any of these words. There we go, and that'll be fun. So thank you for joining me. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good tomorrow morning. So thanks again, guys, and bye-bye.